Welcome to this video on a month of mindfulness, a short video series of monotangles in black and white, with the emphasis on here and now with a pen. Sometimes a really simple tangle can help make the brain think very specifically and making it easier to focus, easier to block out the rest of the rush. And so choosing just one elemental stroke is all that is required for today's tangle. Just to remind you, those elemental strokes are a line, a dot, a curve, a double curve, and an orb. And when I deconstructed this tangle, I thought it must be out there already, as it's so simple, but I never found it. So here it is. It's called Puffform, and it uses the C curve. But I invite you to really focus on that C. How many different ways can you draw that elemental stroke? Maybe it can be big, maybe it can be quite flat, maybe it can be quite slim, maybe it can be quite bulbous. Each pen stroke that's done in this tangle is just doing an individual pen stroke. Don't loop them up like as if you were drawing an M. So let us spend some time honouring each C. If you want to give yourself a border just around the outside edge of your tile, or perhaps if you're working on a bigger tile, then just choose a section. Really doesn't matter what shape section you've got. It can be a slim one, as this one can just snake around. And then pick up your pen, and we're going to draw and honour each C. So I'm going to draw a C. The next C might be a smaller one, and I'm not joining it on at the end of the first element. I'm almost doing as if it's sort of piggybacking off the first one. Each C just in its own elemental fashion. You might have some really small ones. You might have quite a flat one. Each C just individual to build together to do this little formation. Just like our handwriting, each of ours is different. Each of those different strokes build up a different style of handwriting for each person, but we can still read it. So embrace those C shapes, deliberately changing how you might draw it each time, with a focus on changing a flat one, a small one, a round one, a really big one, a couple of small ones, one that goes in the other direction. Each time producing a little cloud-like formation up into the sky. Perhaps you might want to enhance it with adding some elemental strokes which are all exactly the same. Or perhaps you want to do different ones each time. Variety here is the spice on how this works. And then afterwards we can use enhancement technique. So perhaps you might add some weighted lines, just making some of them lines a little bit thicker as you go round. Just adding a little extra bit of ink. Or perhaps you might add some perfs. Perhaps they're sitting on the line, on your C curves, just some mini perfs. Each perf attached to the line you've drawn. maybe they'll be slightly bigger as well. Whichever way you choose to do it, adding some aura lines. Maybe we'll just add a little inner aura on this curves on this one. However you choose to do it, be deliberate with your lines. Really focus on following a curved line that already exists. If you're doing your auras, making sure that your puffs are attached to your outside line. Maybe you'll just add a little bit of sparkle inside. And then we'll add a little bit of shading. Perhaps where one of these Puffform elements overlaps another one, you might have a little bit of shadow shading. Using your torsion to gently blend the graphite into the texture of the paper that you're working on. If I've gone over my section edge or my line, don't worry, you can just have a little bit of a spill out. You can of course add a little bit of shading on the actual angles of your C's as well if you like. Lots of choice, but don't get too het up about which choices you make. The choice you make will be perfect. It will be right for this occasion. You can always do it differently next time round. And just to seal off my cloud forms, I'm just going to add a little bit of a pen line on that aura edge that I did around my tile today. To seal it off. And once you're happy, don't forget to add your chop or your mark and recognize that your artwork is yours today. So however you've chosen to do your Puffform, perhaps you've added some extra little orbs inside or some rounding on the ends of the lines, or perhaps a bit of sparkle or some extra little dots, or perhaps like the cloud, your Puffform is floating around in an area. So just sometimes remember that simple elemental single stroke, that C curve, with all its variety that you can muster, can be sometimes the easiest way to focus. And just like the cloud puffs in the sky, they all form differently, they change all the time. Hopefully your Puffform is performing too.